Big,
Because
big changes since the last time we spoke.
yeah, we'll just crack on and start talking about it today, and we'll just chop in at some point. So yeah, so obviously Lewis Porter, welcome to the podcast. We've obviously been trying to arrange this one for some time, so we finally got it sorted on Sunday morning in February. Obviously, you've recently had some big news on the work front. Fill us in about that, please, mate.
Yeah, again. So since thanks for having me back on. The last time we spoke for this was back end of March last year.
Yeah, I
April
think it was
feels
early
like
April. Yeah, yeah,
uh,
nearly a year.
yeah, bang at the start of lockdown, and we all thought it was going to be over in like I don't know a short period of time. And
Yeah,
yeah, so I was just on furlough at the time, and yeah, it was all just yeah, a bit minor at the time, but yeah, no, a lot's happened, a lot's changed in that time. In that time, I was brought back off furlough, then made redundant, went self-employed, um, which was fantastic, loved it, and then in the process of trying to organise to have another recording of this, it was
yeah,
another change, and yeah, I've been very fortunate to now be full time at Corda as a senior
brilliant.
videographer. So not what I sort of expected because I was loving the self-employed life. You know, it
Hmm.
was something a bit different every single day. There's a massive satisfaction for getting to go and work with different people, and you know, I was fortunate to get to help film the next series of Monster Carp on a freelance basis, and that was like
Right.
mega. And it was like you go from that end of the spectrum to then the very next week helping out a small bake company with their media or their product shots and stuff. And I don't know, there was something quite really satisfying about being able to offer
Hmm.
that service to such a broad spectrum across the industry. And like, I loved it. And again, like, I love the business side of it, you know, the keeping of your books and keeping track of all your expenses and this, that, and the other, and learning that aspect of business. You know,
Yeah.
there's like in most things, there's many aspects and many layers to different businesses and stuff, and it was interesting to sort of gain a bit more of a older look on it. You know, I used to be self-employed many years ago, like, but
Mm.
when I was landscaping, um, but back then I probably wasn't quite as organised as I am now. So it was like, you know, I used to get a real buzz out of all of that. Jotting out your calendar and making sure you're keeping everyone happy and working on different projects and balancing all of that. So that was all a buzz.
Hmm.
But yeah, then the opportunities now come up, and things have, yeah, like I said, taken a bit of a change. I didn't really
Yeah.
expect it to happen in 2021, but you've got to
Brilliant.
try
Well,
and roll with it.
you sort of almost make your own luck, don't you? So, did it come from that Monster Carp filming trip, or was that sort of where the seed was planted? I suppose.
Uh, I don't know. It was we spoke about it and stuff, but like I said, because I was enjoying the freelance freedom and the sort of self-employed life and that, it
Mm.
was just one of them. It was like, oh yeah, we'll talk about it, but also it was one of them where like we were there to film Monster Carp and sort of enjoy that time there, like so. Um, but no, we spoke about it, but sort of left it at that. And yeah, then sort of around Christmas time, it sort of spoke about it a bit more in depth and whatnot. And then just into the new year, we kind of yeah connected all the dots. So
Brilliant. Well done. That's great news. I'd imagine it's another world in terms of kit, isn't it, that's being used on a production of that size?
mate, like quite mind-boggling, really. Like I there's it's part of me that sort of I look at the projects I've worked on before and that, and I wouldn't change it for the world because ultimately that's what carves you into the person you are now and like the
Mhm.
videographer I am now. Um, but yeah, in terms of the level of production that goes into something like Monster Carp and like from I've only been at Quarter a week, but from what I can already tell, especially given the situation, it's not exactly been the most conventional introduction to a company. Um, it is just a completely different scale, like again, it normally on a shoot, I'd have to be camera one, camera two, photographer, audio, light. you've got to balance absolutely everything. But it was quite nice to sort of, you have your designated role and you've got that support around you to be able to be confident and comfortable enough to go like, right, I only need to focus on this, and providing I get what I need to get done, the rest of it will all come together.
Yeah.
And then equipment wise, yeah, it was like a big step up from what I'd used before, and that was a bit daunting to begin with. But I guess the easiest way to describe it is a bit like driving a car, like, and then driving a bigger car. It's the principle's the same. Like, it's just a much bigger vehicle or a much faster car. So it's that it was a good experience and a good learning curve, and again something I'm looking forward to working with more and more. But ultimately, it's got a lens on the front and it's got a memory card in the back, and so it's yeah.
So how does the diary look? So I suppose it's very much a bit sort of up in the air with knowing what's going on with the lockdown, how it's going to pan out. But if you got a reasonable sort of flexible diary, or is it quite sort of regimented?
At the moment, it's quite like you say. You're right in the sense that it's very hard to get anything sort of planned in that. There's bits booked in that, but I think it's all very open to change. Because again, like, who would have thought it that we'd still be in another lockdown, third time lucky, and pretty much a year down the line, we're still sort of dealing with COVID, which, again, I think it's had a knock-on effect for a lot of businesses and a lot of situations and plans and stuff. Again, like, from the freelance aspect of working with all these different companies and that, I got an insight into different things they were working on and that, and again, like, a lot of people's plans have been affected, and it's just one of them. Like, you've just kind of got to roll with it and make the best of what you can. So just sort of waiting for that sort of Boris nod to say that you can go and do what you need to do, or be a bit more flexible. But again, it's for this, we're constantly moving goalposts, isn't it? Well, one week it seems like things might be on the turn for the positive, and then next thing you know, you watch a different news report and it's the complete opposite.
Yeah. So I listened to one of the more recent quarter podcasts where Damon Clark was on there saying about the increased cost in shipping from China, how that's having a big impact. So I suppose we're going to still be a few months or even years off until we see like the impact really sort of hit home at like a consumer level as well, aren't we? There's going to be that sort of lag before.
Oh
we
yeah,
really true effect.
There's going to be all sorts of different things. Obviously, with Brexit going through as well, that's probably brought a lot of things up that people didn't expect to have to deal with. And again, like, those are the cards we're being dealt, and you kind of just got to roll with it. But yeah, certainly it's going to be an interesting future.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And lots of things to adjust and adapt to. But like anything, the equilibrium will come back, and that sort of balance will happen. It's just when we don't know, and when will we get another curveball thrown at us, and we'll see.
I think it's with those that can be the most flexible, isn't it? They're gonna do the best. They're gonna survive. It's just being able to how quick you can adapt. And I suppose the bigger the company, the slower they move as well, isn't it? When you're talking sort of massive companies.
I guess it sort of depends on the mentality and the structure of the company, or like the sort of ethos of it. You've got some of these massive cruise ships that can turn on sixpence if they need to. I guess it's just how open people are to change and stuff. And again, ultimately, you've got to either adapt or it's one of them sink or swims, isn't it? So again, I listened back to the last podcast, and a lot of it was like, what's the alternative? And like, so again, we've got to adapt to different situations and constantly move in that, like, because otherwise you sort of just, well, it's not a nice reality, is it?
Yeah, you stagnate and then that's it, and bang. Yeah. Right, that's all the boring political COVID stuff we're going to talk about now, I promise. I'd like to sort of move on to, obviously you mentioned the videography side. I think the photography and videography side of it in kart fishing seems to be sort of gaining a lot of traction. So it'd be good to sort of dive into a bit of that to maybe sort of on like a newbie, a beginner level, like sort of I wouldn't mind sort of just covering some settings and things, basic camera settings with you, if that'd be okay.
Yeah, not a problem.
So just the very basics. If we just talk about sort of aperture, shutter speed, and ISO and how they relate to each other, would you be good to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, it's again a common sort of question that gets asked on Instagram and stuff about
Mm-hmm.
what's the different what settings should I be using and stuff, and it's a bit of a tough one because every situation is different. All light
Yeah,
is different, and again, ultimately, it depends on what style you want. And again, like that was a cool thing about the Monster Carp shoots is you had a lot of photographers or like the big videographers or the different people on the shoot, different members of the crew. All the common denominator was a lot of them liked photography. So you had
yeah,
like 7 or 8 guys at one point potentially taking pictures of a fish or pictures of a scene or whatever, and how different all of those would come out because everyone's got their different shooting style. Um, but I guess the one of the easier ways to describe aperture is like if you look at a loaf of bread, like if you've got a if your sort of aperture's at like a 1.4, that's one slice of bread. But if it's a f16 or whatever, that's like the whole loaf of bread.
in
You're
focus.
shooting down or shooting through. So that
Yeah.
sort of depends on how much of your shot is in focus, that sort of depth there. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people like the blurry background and stuff, might go a bit too far with it at times where they drop it, their lens allows them to drop right down to 1.8 or 1.4 and they shoot on that and you get the front scale in focus, but by the time that you've sort of lost focus of the top of the dorsal. Um,
Yeah. And then they're really soft as well.
Really, really soft. And again, like a lot
Mm.
of lenses aren't their sharpest at their lowest aperture. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's worth just going up a bit higher. And yeah, again, it's a tough one. Like I always say to people, is the best way to learn about those different settings and different abilities your camera can do is to go out and do it. Have a play around, learn from your mistake, go back and analyze what you've done. Again, bloody hell, the amount of photos I've probably taken over the last 5 years, I'd hate to have had to print them out on film because it
Mm.
would have cost an absolute fortune. And again,
Yeah.
that's the brilliance of having digital cameras now is that you can take 1,000 photos and then you can delete every single one, and it's not cost you anything. It's not done any sort of damage or whatever. So um, go out and adjust, learn. Maybe if you've got a fish and stuff, maybe don't gamble too much. There's a time and a place to gamble with settings, but
Mm.
looking back again, what I used to do a lot was take pictures for other people because I could play around with a camera. I knew my camera a bit more than what a complete stranger would, and I could have a play around in manual. That's the sort. That's where you want to be if you can. Because that gives you the most control over the type of shot you can take. Um, in terms sort of going off back onto the sort of different settings and that obviously ISO is a common one. Again, I get a lot of messages, people saying like, oh, I've done some studio recording and
Mm.
um, I've got my lights and stuff, but my ISO's on 1600 and it's really, really grainy. And it's like, well, yeah, again, learning curve is that depending on your camera body and stuff is depends on how much you can push your ISO
Mm-hmm.
up, and that sort of allows artificial light or um, it makes the image brighter or the video clip brighter, but at the expense potentially of quality. The lower your ISO, the more natural it will look and the less grain that will be in there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some camera bodies are designed more for video or they have that ability to take the A7S 2 and now the A7S 3. I mean, you can push the ISO up on them to like 64,000 if you've got the right and like it still be usable footage. Like it's not going to be perfect, but in amongst a B-roll sequence or a video, you can really get some creative stuff in that. But take I don't know. I use an A7 III a lot. Realistically, I don't really want to be pushing that much further than 1600, 2000 before I really start to notice it.
Right.
So there's a big jump there between its capabilities of what it can do with ISO and grain and stuff. So again, it's learning your camera and knowing what it can and can't do. Um, You don't buy a Land Rover to go around a racetrack. Like again, you
Mhm.
sort of buy the camera for what you need it to. If you're more into photography, you'll look for the spec that's better for that. If you're into your videography, you'll again tailor it to that. But again, what a lot of people want is an all rounder. The problem
Yeah.
with an all rounder is it's not particularly going to be the best at one or the other. It sits in
Okay,
the
I see what
middle,
you
and
mean.
the capabilities of those will be more limited.
Yeah. How does shutter speed relate to sort of video work?
uh, I mean, in an absolute ideal world, your shutter speed would be double your frame rate. So you can a lot of things are either shot in 25 frames per second, or 50 frames per second, or 100 frames, depending on what
Hmm.
your camera can do. Like it might be a bit more slow mo and stuff, but in an absolute ideal world, your shutter speed would be double that. So if you're shooting in 20 frames per second, 25 frames per second, it'll be a 50th of a second shutter speed.
Right.
Um, Consequently, with that, will mean then you need to have an ND filter potentially on the front if it's too bright, if you don't want to adjust it. Um, and again, I think it sort of depends on the camera because I look back at what I was doing at Carpology and I never used ND filters there. And I
Yeah.
would just up my shutter speed to like a thousandth of a second. And I think like that's like goes completely against the rule, but
Hmm.
I'd still manage to achieve what I needed to. Again,
Do you know what? Sorry to put in. Do you know where's that rule come from? Like the frames per second to sort of double your shutter speed.
I don't necessarily know where it comes from, if I'm honest. It's just, I think it provides a more natural flow to the image because
Right.
the way the shutter works and stuff, the way it records the footage and stuff, it's the more natural flow of of the human eye and how the camera processes the video clip. Like I said,
Right.
I'm not properly clued up on that. And like I said, but
Mhm.
it's just one of them natural things that as my videography work went forward, it was just do it because you do it or I've been told to. Got
Mhm.
used to using ND filters, and then what was lovely on the cameras on the Monster Carpet Shoot was they've got a built-in ND filter, so in
Right.
the camera body, so it was like wow, like that was fantastic to use because I'm
Game
not having to worry
changer.
about the front and stuff and
Yeah.
yeah, again, it was just that sort of next level camera, but that's the sort of basic. But again, it's rules are there, they're sort of in place, and don't get me wrong, I probably have found on certain clips that if the shutter speed was too high, it would mess with the clip slightly.
Mhm.
But for the types of videos I was creating at the time, ultimately sometimes you've just got to grab the shot however you can.
Yeah.
It's again like with fishing, you're documenting, you're not creating a lot of the
Mhm.
time. So it's better to have 30 seconds of whatever it was than going, oh, wait 2 seconds, I need to put on an ND filter, I need to do this and adjust it. Like you just kind of roll
Yeah.
with it and
Yeah.
go from there. It's not going to be the most polished, crisp piece of footage or it's not going to be to the book, but you've got it over haven't got it.
Yeah. Sure. And for those that don't know, what is an ND filter, Lou?
Neutral density filter, they're normally like a variable ND. So basically, it's a darkened piece of glass that goes on front of your camera or in front of
Mhm.
the lens. That means that you can block light coming in, so you can stick to that shutter speed and have a low aperture. So like
Right.
you can shoot nice and shallow, but by shooting shallow, you're allowing more light to come in like quicker. And by having the low shutter speed, it might be that yeah, the image is too bright. So to correctly expose that shot, you'd have a variable ND on the front, which you can twist, and it will adjust slightly and allow more light or less light come through. Basically,
Right. Got it. Okay. So it's almost like sunglasses, isn't it? For
yeah, basically
lens.
that's a nice
So
way to look at it.
the obviously you mentioned about sort of trying to shoot shallow to get that nice sort of depth of field. Is that tricky if you've got a moving subject? So I assume if you've got the aperture wider open,
Yeah.
there's a very fine balance between missing the focus and not. How do you sort of overcome that?
Uh, again, it sort of depends on. It can be difficult, Certainly, it depends on what you're filming and stuff. But um, I made the switch over to native Sony. They're Sigma lenses, but they've got the connection straight to Sony body.
Right.
In the past, I was using a Metabones adapter for my Canon lenses on my Sony body,
Mm.
and for the autofocus on that, it wasn't great. Um, but because I've got native lenses now, the autofocus abilities of the Sony A7 III are pretty good, and also now got the newer models like the A7R 3, 4, the A7S 2 and 3. To be fair, are pretty good, but um, you can do a lot more. And again, it's a bit like with the Canon autofocus is really good. It's certainly, again, like I said, I stopped using the Canon bodies after the 5D Mark III, but like the 70D and the 80D, the tracking focus was brilliant. The
Yeah.
autofocus on them was great, so you could get away with it. And again, they're great on the Sonys as well, when you use a native lens. But again, it kind of comes down to practice makes perfect. Again, on the Sony, you've got things like focus assist and stuff, which will be like, it comes up with everything that's in focus has got like a red dots all over it, so it's easier to sort of
Right.
view, and you kind of know roughly what's there. But yeah, it's one of them where you've just got to practice with it. And again, sometimes you just don't shoot that shallow. You up your aperture and that, and
Mhm.
and you give yourself a bit more leeway. But yeah, certainly if you're shooting on like 1.4 and you're trying to track someone and you're doing it on manual focus, it's not
Yeah.
easy. It's definitely not easy.
Yeah. And then do you do most of your shooting handheld on a tripod or a gimbal?
Again, sort of depends on the project. Like I've got a gimbal, I've got a slider. Um, Going out with Hassan a lot of the time, it was just easier to do things handheld. I'd have my 24mm prime on for majority of the day,
Mm.
and you're sort of running and gunning. But with product stuff, you can be a bit more structured, a bit more organised. So a lot of what I tend to find is too much of anything would spoil it. So if you had all gimbal stuff,
Yeah.
it's too much. So you'd sort of, I'd get the gimbal out. Let's say I've got my shot list and I need 20 shots. I'd go, right, five of those are going to be on the gimbal, five are going to be on the slider, five are going to be handheld, and five are going to be on the tripod. It's
Mm.
it's always a fine balancing act. But again, I completely understand. You've just got yourself a new toy in form of a gimbal or a slider. You want to use it for everything. And again,
Yeah.
you get some really nice slider shots, and like it adds something to your production. But like I said, too much of anything can spoil it, and a bit of motion sickness to it as well. Like certainly when it comes back to the edit and stuff, and
Mm.
if you've got too many going one direction, or like it again, like it's not until you sit down and you look back at your footage and you start piecing it all together that you go, maybe I should have got it going the other way or coming back the
Yeah.
other way. So again, it's
Yeah.
a constant. The more planned out you can make your video, the better it will be in the edit. And
Right, that's what I was going to touch on
yeah.
when you mentioned the shot list. So yeah, if you can cover a bit about that, that'd be really good.
So because again, like it was really useful for being self-employed, because again, like you could be more efficient. But like something I've always done, and I know I touched on the last podcast, it was I always plan out, certainly product stuff, is I'll always plan out my shoot. When I'm out on the bank, I want to know exactly what I need to get, and providing I get
Mm.
that, I've got my work done or that video completed. If something else happens and I might see something that I didn't think of, I can film that as well, and I might find a place for it, or I might slot in somewhere different. But a lot of the time, I'll go out with a certain shot list. I go, right, there's this caption. I might be filming a new set of rods, and it'll be a Fuji uh, reel seat or something, or whatever it might be. And I'll go, right,
Mhm.
okay, I need 3 shots of that reel seat in use, or to cover up that caption. Once I've
Mhm.
got them 3 shots, I don't need anything else. I don't need to invest any more time whilst I'm out into worrying about that reel seat. It's
Yeah.
done. And again, I know that once I get home, I've already chosen the music for the video. I've already chopped up the amount of beats that are in that caption. I know exactly what I've got or what I need to get. And then when I get home, I can literally drop it in like a jigsaw and it's job done. There's no overkill. There's no loads of footage left on the editing floor. I've not got to pick through 1,000 clips. I've got 30 clips, but every single one of those is going to get used, or
Right.
95% of them. It
Yeah.
it can be not dangerous because sometimes I'll come home some days and it might be that wasn't as good as I thought it was. I now need to go back out, but that's the
Mhm.
again part of the learning curve. Is you go right, okay, I need three, maybe I'll get four or five as a backup, but
Right. So
no
you're
more
almost
than
so
that
you're sort of shooting with the edit in mind almost.
all the time. Again,
Yeah.
there'll always be some form of structure. Again, it was a bit similar to when I'd go out of Hassan on the lives.
Mhm.
Although we wouldn't know necessarily what would happen, the basic foundations for a video was always in place. I would know I'd need an intro. I'd know I'd need an update. There'd be a capture of some description. To then lead from that, we'd then go into a bait piece or a rig piece or something. Then it would
Mhm.
be like a random Hassan doing something completely random that he does. Like there was always a structure or a skeleton to work from
Yeah.
because that's like it's more efficient, and you have something to work towards. You could just shoot aimlessly and hope for the best, but if you don't, you're leaving a lot of things to chance there.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, certainly within fishing, you don't get a second chance.
Absolutely. No, that's nice. In terms of your own fishing, I'd imagine there hasn't been too much of that with everything's going on and your new job.
No, is the honest answer. It was the same as last time. Um, I I did. I got into the good habit of going during the very first lockdown. After we spoke in that, it was
Yeah.
once we sort of realised this was going to be maybe a bit more long term than that, and once fishing was allowed again, it was like right, okay, sweet. I'm going to commit to going for one day a week. And when I got brought back off a furlough, I did the same. It was like what I'd do is I'd work all day Monday, I'd fish Monday evening and night, and then whatever filming I needed to get done that week I'd do on the Tuesday because I'm already
Mhm.
there. I'm set up. It's a bit more natural and a bit more sort of there. I'm not forcing the scene, um, and I could balance that. And I was getting the work done. I was I was only away for one night a week. It was great. It was perfect. Then I'd meet up with Hassan on Thursday still. Um, but I was doing I was managing to do at least one night a week, and I was buzzing. It was perfect. And then I was made redundant, which was far from ideal. It was like
Mhm.
it. In the end, it worked out to be the best thing that ever happened to me in the grand scheme of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
So look at taking the positive from the negative there. But yeah, in terms
Mhm.
of my own fishing, it was like if I've got time to go fishing, being self-employed, I've got time to find work, drum up work, or complete more work. It like
Yeah.
it wasn't easy, but I was very fortunate. From the off, I was busy. Like for the second I said I was going self-employed and I was available for freelance work,
Mhm.
like I started in the September. And I think I worked like 25 days, or I booked in 25 days in that September. And I was like, oh, bloody hell, right, okay. And then
That's a credit to you just to put in there. Sorry, that's a credit to you. I mean, I know a little bit about business, and to obviously what you've done is built up your own brand and a high level of trust in the angling niche. So to be able to say you were that busy in your first month doing it full time is just a credit
oh,
to you. So fair play for
mate,
that.
like, I count myself very, very lucky that from the given the situation, given the state of the world, and like coming from September, like from that point onwards, it's pretty much downhill for fishing films and stuff because everything gets so much
Mhm.
harder come the winter and that. But
Yeah.
from September onwards up until obviously now taking the job at Corda, I've been as busy as I've ever wanted to be. Like I've had,
Yeah.
I've had great clients, and again, I'll forever be grateful for the support and the sort of like, you know, the work that I've managed to do for them and stuff. But like, yeah, it was mental. Like I loved it, and it wasn't an easy choice to go um, to stop doing that. I loved it, like, and
Mhm.
it was yeah, like I said, though, it was from the off. It was like mega chock a block busy, and like, fortunately, I had my other half who like on certainly not necessarily once the work started and once I'd sort of put myself out there, it was a bit like it was game time and it was on. But sort of August time, as the sort of redundancy was going through, it was I had a couple of days where yeah, your head drops and you sort of. I was a bit worried about announcing that I was going to be going self-employed and stuff because I didn't know how it was going to be. I've always wanted to be busy in that, so I was kind of a bit apprehensive about that. But she kept
Mm.
giving me the kick up the arse and the sort of polite, what you're doing today. Because again, it's quite easy to slip into a bad negative habit of coasting and just the days going past. But sort of every day, she'd be like, what have you done? Who have you spoken to? Like, have you done? And at the time, I probably took it a bit for granted. But upon reflection, I kind of go, like, if it weren't for them little kicks up the arse or the little tap on the shoulder every so often, I don't think it would have been quite as busy and successful as it was for the time I was doing it if it wasn't for her. So
Yeah.
I got to take me out after Rach for that. Um,
Brilliant.
but no, it was yeah. So again, going back to it, personal fishing was like non-existent. I mean, I'd done
Mhm.
a couple of lake videos for places, but again, like that was running around filming all day and then sort of catching up on sleep in the night and stuff, and
Yeah.
doing product videos. I've done a lot of stuff in my studio, which again has been great over lockdown because it's not exactly been the nicest time to be out in the bank recently.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, like it's personal fishing sort of taking a back seat. I did a little bit in
Yeah.
December. I've done whilst we could, there was a couple of socials that I had, and it was nice to catch up with my mate Whitford and that I hadn't seen all year because of the lockdown and stuff. Normally we'd get out once or twice a year, but it was like no, right, we've got to make it happen, and we did in December.
Yeah. I saw that. Yeah.
And I was like, right, I want a Christmas jumper carp. Like that's
Mhm.
that's the target. I don't care how big, how small, whatever. And we had a nice social, and it was nice to sort of catch up together
Mm.
and almost a form of normality to the
Yeah.
session.
Yeah.
And then yeah, again, there's always the best laid plans and stuff. Like I had planned to maybe look at a Horton ticket or something like that this year.
Mhm.
Don't know if I'm going to bother now. Now that
Yeah.
things have changed, like yeah, like when things get back to some form of normality, I'm hoping that life is going to be very busy and there's going to be loads to shoot and loads of projects to work on and just to get myself sunk into. So
Brilliant. That's good. I mean, you mentioned it a few times there. I wouldn't mind talking a little bit about mindset. Obviously, you mentioned about it could be easy to slip into a negative and how you stayed positive. And as well, obviously, you touched upon the redundancy, although not at the time, turning out to be sort of one of the best things that's happened. So that could very easily have gone the other way. You've seen the positives, pushed and hit the ground running with all the sort of foundations you've laid. So it'd be good to talk a bit about that.
yeah, I mean, like I said, like it was a strange situation being made redundant. Like I'm 25. I'd never gone through that process before. Like so, it was all new, all alien. And like for probably many people, it's everyone probably knows somebody that has gone through it, certainly over the last 12 months. So it was weird. And yeah, I did. I slipped into a bit of a negative headspace about it because, again, that's only natural. But after like a week or two, and I'd sort of found out that there was nothing I could do. It was like, right,
Mhm.
okay, there's no point investing any more energy into it. And it was like, again, what's the alternative? Or like, I could invest all this energy into being down and negative about it, or I can just get on with it. Like that's life. No amount of like sitting there feeling sorry for myself was ever going to change anything.
Mhm.
So it was like, right, okay, what can I do? What's the lessons I can take from it? And again, I had a great time at AD, and again, I learned a lot of lessons, if anything, life lessons from it. So it was like, right, okay, take those, take stock, learn from those, and move forward. And like you said, over the last sort of like 5 years, I've built up a lot of contacts and stuff, and the opportunities were there. I just needed to take them, and I did. And like I said, it wasn't easy, and so again, certainly over that self-employed life, you probably know yourself, like, is you don't always find the balance correctly.
Yeah, I don't think there is a balance.
No, and again, because like it's a snowball effect. Because when you're having a good time with it, you want more of that, so you just carry
Mhm.
on. You sort of plow forward in that. But it's there was so much focus on drumming up work and completing work and stuff. The sort of I'd not done much reading, not listened to many positive videos and stuff on YouTube. I wasn't reading. I wasn't sort of eating correctly and stuff. And I'd put a bit of weight back on, which I'd never wanted to do. Not much, but enough for me to notice. And it was like,
Mm.
right, okay, again, need to. Matthew McConaughey talks about the sort of the balancing of the bricks and stuff in your life. Like you've got your work, you've got your family, you've got your health, and you've got your. For him, it's religion, but
Mhm.
it's like so many of my bricks have been loaded onto my work because there's so much focus was on it. Just a few things
Mm.
had slipped by. So
Yeah.
certainly in the new year, again, never a better time really. It was like, right, okay, knuckle down. Let's get back to where I want to be health wise. Let's get back to eating clean and fueling your body correctly, and sort of ultimately everything bleeds into everything. It's
Mhm.
a massive snowball effect, and when one thing starts to go well, and you see the progress or you see the results from it, it just starts to build and build and build. And like obviously we've spoken and we'll touch on it as well. But you've been doing a challenge yourself, haven't you?
Yeah,
Um,
that's right, and it's so true what you say. Like, so moving the health thing, that's where it all starts, isn't it? Because your mindset just switches. There's less negative thoughts that come in. You get more energy. You wake up earlier naturally.
yeah,
Yeah,
everything just
definitely.
feels so much better. And if you follow me on Instagram and stuff, you might have seen on my story, like I've got this massive whiteboard in my office,
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
and like if I'm honest, I don't want to have to track what I clean or what I've got planned to clean in the house this on that specific day of the week. I don't want to know what I'm eating. I don't want that to be the reality that you have to know what you're eating for dinner, lunch, what exercise you're doing, what book I'm reading, and delegating time for me. Like the bottom row is for me. Like a
Mhm.
chunk of the day, I'm committing to that. But at the moment, there's still so much that we can't control. And again, you could
Mhm.
sit back and focus on that and get yourself down and disheartened, or you can go, right, okay, these are small wins, these are small things I can do each single day that by the end of the day, in the grand scheme of things, they're not going to make a massive difference on their own. But there's a satisfaction to ticking off each thing. And at the end of each day, I can go, this is what I've achieved today. Or like I done yesterday, I sat back and I looked at my board and I went, okay, I missed a few bits this week. That's how I can be better next week.
Yeah.
And it's a constant analysis of the situation. And like we're going to blink, and before we know it, it's going to be April, May time,
Mhm.
and like time just goes by. Although it feels like it's dragging at the moment. I mean, we're already into this. We're coming up to the second week in February already from the new
Yeah.
year. Like to me, that's mental, and it's like it could have quite easily have just slipped past and like you've done nothing. You've
Mhm.
achieved like you've not set yourself any sort of target or little wins to do. And again, it's those little wins that sort of bleed into each other and sort of snowball, and one leads to another. And again, it's them small things that when eventually that bigger opportunity does come up, you're in a better mindset and a better like position
Yeah.
to be able to tackle that. So it, yeah, again, it's I'm all about the positivity and sort of trying to help yourself. Like,
Yeah, and I'd imagine as well with that board, there's a bit of accountability factor going on as well. If you're staring at that board, knowing full well you haven't done those tasks, that's not going to sit very well, is it?
oh mate, massive. You know, there's some days I get to like 6:30, 7 o'clock in the evening, and I'm like, oh shit, I've still got like 4 things I need to tick off,
Yeah,
and it's like, well, yeah, I sort of have a manic couple of hours, and I managed to get it all done, and I'm like, yep, sweet, bang. And again, that's the same with the Insta story. I
yeah,
don't think people are particularly interested in which way Arthur slept today, but what I liked about the Insta story is that I'm a creative.
yeah,
I'm not necessarily going out at the moment and taking photos of stuff that I would want to put on my main feed, but by taking 10 or 15 photos for the Insta story a day, I get that
mhm,
creative output. It gives me
yeah,
something to sort of, like you said, that a bit of accountability and stuff. And what's been nice about it is the days where I haven't done it, I've had a couple of messages come through. Everything all right? Like what's happened? Like what calorie controlled meal have you had today? Or like what you did? And I'm like,
yeah,
that makes it worth it as well. You know, I do it ultimately for me, but it's nice when it comes through. Or like I've had a lot of messages from a lot like from people that have said like, can I have some advice on it? Or like, why'd you do this? And like, how can that
mhm,
help me? And like, and again, I just say like, again, talk about the snowball effect, and again, that sort of them little wins and stuff. And again, like it's the winter blues don't normally affect me, but I think with lockdown this year, it
yeah,
has. And at times I've dropped my head a little bit. And there's been days where I've not wanted to do stuff, but by having the board and having that bit of accountability,
mhm,
you just get it done. Like it doesn't matter if you're in the mood for it. Like doesn't matter if I don't fancy gammon and egg for dinner. I'm just getting it done. Like
yeah,
that's it. I know it's good fuel for me. I can, it'll be under on my calories. It's not what I want. In reality, I want a big steak or a burger or whatever. But
mhm,
no, I'm going to tick it off the board. I'm going to get it done. Then by the end of the week, I'm like, I feel so much better. I'm done. I
yeah,
can enjoy the weekend. I can have an extra gin and tonic or whatever. And it's there's
mhm,
them small wins where at the moment you can't necessarily always have the bigger wins. Um, and again, it's laying the foundations out now. Like,
yeah,
doing a little bit of cleaning every day means that when you do have to do the clean, it's not a massive job. You've not got to
mhm,
delegate out bloody 3 hours for one room because you've not done it for so long. And it's the same with the running. I'm so glad I started running at the start of the year because come the spring and summer, when it is nicer and you want to be out running, I'm going to
yeah,
be in a position where my foundation's already laid. I'm not going to be
yeah,
blowing my arse out doing 5K in 40 minutes because I'm not fit enough.
mhm.
Like I can go out, I can enjoy being out in the sunshine and going for a run, feeling good already because I've done the hard work now.
Yeah, definitely. I've scribbled down something. I scribbled it down a while ago, but I'll bring it up. Talk to me a bit about delayed gratification.
Oh, delayed gratification. It's it's a weird one, delayed gratification, because nothing is ever really promised. You know,
Yeah,
you could put off getting something or treating yourself to something, and then the situation completely change, and then you won't actually get that. But uh, if you was to have to work a little bit harder for something, it makes it a bit sweeter.
mhm,
And like again, it helps out with everything. Like again, like with being self-employed in that, balancing your books and money becomes a lot more. You're a lot more strict with it
mhm.
when
Yeah,
when
yeah,
you've got everything else to factor in and stuff. And like I don't know, like I said, I was in a fortunate position where work was busy and things were good and that. And if I wanted something, I had it. I sort of had the ability to get it if I wanted it. You know, if I really
mhm,
wanted, like. But if I said to myself, no, okay, wait a bit longer. Do you actually need that? I reflect, I analysed it and went, do you actually need it? Is it going to benefit you in any sort of way? Maybe wait a bit longer to see if you actually really want it. And then, like, ultimately, I've either saved money or I've worked out that it's something I really, really want, and I've also had to work a bit harder for it. So then it means a bit more.
Hmm.
Um, and again, it's then it's going back and appreciating them little small things in life, like. And again, at the moment, with the way the lockdown is and everything like that, it's the small things that make the big difference, and like them little wins, them little spikes of happiness or joy that you might get from that delayed gratification is then even more heightened.
Yeah,
So it might be difficult and it might be tempting just to get it and treat yourself straight away, but it's sometimes worth delaying that.
yeah. You mentioned it earlier about when I asked you about fishing, and you said about September you were going to go, and obviously you were so busy going self-employed.
Yeah,
You could have still gone fishing if you wanted to.
I could
But
have
you're
done.
your own boss. But you chose what I'd consider the sensible sort of smart route.
Well, it was just one of them where like it was difficult because again I wanted to go fishing and I'll always be an angler and there's always bits I wanted to, but I knew eventually that something would come up, and like so on the monster carp shoots, like you could do a bit of perch fishing, and that was like or a bit
Mm.
of pike fishing. And that was brilliant. I've never really done much predator fishing away, like obviously I did a bit with Hassan and stuff, but like
Hmm.
away from that, like I'd never take a little drop shotting rod or a little lure rod with me, but for those I did, and it was like it was a real buzz when you'd do what you needed to do, and there was a bit of spare time, and you could go off and cast a couple of lures and catch a couple of perch and that. That was mega. And then again,
Yeah,
like the delayed gratification, like me and Whitford, we could have met up. Again, ultimately, I was furloughed and so was he. And like once you were allowed to mix households for a brief period of time, we could have gone whenever. We could have made that time whenever, but we didn't. We delayed it, and in the end, it was like a Christmas social and that, and it was so much better. And it
yeah,
wasn't, it was cold. It was very, very cold, but it was it was nice. And again, we delayed that sort of that time. And again, what I think a lot of people find is because me and the other half we didn't really get to go like away on our first holiday together properly last year. But when we eventually do, it's going to mean a lot more, I think.
yeah.
And like you'll appreciate it a lot more. And them little things like going to the horse races for the day, going out for dinner and that, like again when like
Hmm.
pubs and stuff opened up and restaurants, like it was mega. You
Yeah,
appreciated them that being able to sit down in a beer garden or sat down at a table, not cooking your own food, and
yeah,
you just appreciated it that bit more. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I don't appreciate the prices of cocktails and stuff, like, or like gin and tonics from an actual pub or whatever. They're just
Yeah,
so
that always
expensive.
gets me when you can make it the same at home.
Oh,
I don't mind a beer because it's on tap.
that's
It
it.
tastes a bit different. But when they pour something out of a bottle of wine or a bottle of beer, it's like,
That's oh,
what?
mate, absolutely bonkers. But we appreciated it. Like
Yeah.
what we did do, we managed to go to Mill Lodge retreats in Essex. Like
Right.
we booked
Nice.
on for a weekend. I had to move it because of Monster Carp, but like
Yeah.
we went there. I think it was back end of November, December,
Right.
and it was great. Like it was Rachel's first experience of fishing. Like it's not like fishing because you're in a nice
Yeah. I've
warm
seen the
cabin.
food. Oh.
Oh mate, the food was like unbelievable. But we appreciated that weekend away probably
Yeah.
more than what we would have done. Like, we had a trip to Greece together in last April, which got cancelled. But
Mhm.
I'd say we probably appreciate it. I appreciate it anyway. That time together more than probably would have done at the time in that headspace and mentality back in the April going to Greece.
Mm.
So yeah, again, a bit delayed gratification, and again, just sort of appreciating the small things in life.
Yeah, brilliant. I got one more question and then we'll wrap up. So I'm mindful of your time and we're approaching the hour
That's all
mark. Hypothetically, if there was a fire in your house, your garage, whatever, and you could only grab one, your fishing kit or your camera kit, which one would it be and why?
right. Camera kit.
Yeah, same.
Like, I don't. I love my fishing, and I've got a few bits that I'm quite sentimental with.
Yeah.
But my what my camera equipment has allowed me to do in my short life, in the grand scheme of things, it, there's no comparison. And
Yeah.
and again, by going self-employed and venturing a little bit outside of fishing, like you said, my niche is my fishing.
Hmm.
That's my bread and butter. But there were opportunities that come up and that I took and that I managed to do that, like videography and photography bleeds into so many different industries. Like
Yeah.
everyone wants
Yeah.
content, everyone needs it for their social or for their website or whatever. And the doors that it can open if you knock on the right doors is fantastic. So yeah, if the house was on fire and I could only grab one, it'd be the camera equipment.
Yeah. That's a great answer, mate. And I think the same. I went for a day session a couple of days ago and enjoyed the fishing, but I got the camera out and it just gives me, I don't know, it's just more of a buzz, like that satisfaction of nailing a shot. I think I sent you a couple
Yeah,
actually,
you
or
did. They were lovely.
watching the sun go down. Yeah, for me, that's the one. And obviously, I mean, I could happily just wander around lakes doing like trophy shots for people and be an absolute element.
Mate, it's what I said
Funny,
on the
isn't it?
last one. Is I learn, and probably what you'll learn is your buzz comes in a different way when you're fishing. And
Hmm.
again, it's just in life, mate. Like, me and the other half went for a walk on Christmas Day, and like, I ended up taking a couple of pictures of this couple with their newborn in the park.
Yeah,
Like everyone was there
yeah,
for. I just said, "What's your email? Do you mind if I take a couple of pictures for you?" Took it, and then the response back to that was buzzy. Like
yeah,
it was such a nice moment to be able to do. And then again, like they've got a nice picture in that, and it was a nice
yeah.
memory to take. And again, like what by being able to film and stuff and take photos, like you just concrete their memories in a completely different way. Like each
Hmm.
year, like I montage my nephew's that year in his life. So at the end of each year, he's got a memory, along with the
Hmm.
pictures that get taken along the way. We,
Yeah.
put together all the video clips, and then we've got that to look back on. So many memories
Yeah.
can easily be forgotten, and I take notes on absolutely everything. Like I've got multiple calendars, and one of them is like my personal calendar. And
Hmm.
like I went back at the start of the year, I sort of looked back across last year at all the things that although there was a lot of things we couldn't do and we didn't do, I took stock of all the little things. They might be minor, and you might at the time I took them, I don't quite know why I wrote it down, but I'm so
Yeah.
glad I did. And again, I think it's
Yeah.
an important one. Like I've started keeping a journal this year. Like again, just mind, like them sort of random thoughts you might get at whatever time at night. Literally, just
Hmm.
scribble it down and it's done. And it's also interesting to then look back and go see what sort of position you was in. Um,
Yeah.
but it does make you appreciate them little small things that you did write down, them little things you did take note of, and you're able to go, okay, maybe it wasn't the best of months, but there was a good time to take. Not every day is going to be a good day, but there will be something
Hmm.
good in each day. So
Yeah.
it's again, by having that, I've got the ability to use that. If I didn't write it down, if I didn't have that to look back on, and again, it's the same with the pictures. If I didn't keep hard drives of all my old pictures, all my old video clips, I could never look back and reminisce and pick my mood up. But
Yeah.
I'm fortunate I have got that position or that ability to be able to do that. And again, same with you now. Like you can now look back in years to come at them pictures or them video clips and go, God, like that was a good place. That was a good time.
That's it. Brilliant. That's a great answer. Lou, we'll wrap up there. Thank you very much, mate. Really
Thank you very much,
appreciate
mate.
it.
And hopefully we'll do this another one soon.
Yeah, on the bank.
On the
Maybe.
bank, that'd be nice.
Yeah, in 2025.
Don't say that, God.
Right, take care, mate.
You too, mate. All the best.
Cheers, bye.